Hello everybody, ciao a tutti and welcome to Art with Ms.B. Today I'm going to teach you how to draw a beautiful moth. Moths are very fascinating insect, and through this practice you're going to learn how to use the basic nice lines and a couple of organic / geometric shapes to create the body and the wings of the animal. We're going to work on symmetry which means that the left side has to be almost identical to the right side, which is a challenge, but a beautiful, nice challenge that I invite you all to, embrace. If you follow my step carefully, you will be able to draw a beautiful moth that is very good for beginner and intermediate. But as you know me, I always like to challenge even young learners or beginner artists because I feel that we can do something that is not super complicated, not extremely realistic, but it's not even basic. So we find a nice, good balance so you can create something that, is nice, proficient, that show details and care. I will use markers to color. You can use markers as well, and you will listen to my voice in guiding you so you will know the options during the practice. Or if you prefer, you can use coloring pencils, and I will give options about that as well during the practice. You definitely need a white piece of paper or your drawing journal and a pencil. An eraser just in case, but I always invite you not to erase too much. Just go slow, good, like a soft lines, don't press hard. And even if it's not exactly identical to my design or perfect, just leave it and trust the process. I'm gonna switch the camera so we can start. Okay, friends, this is our paper and we start with a pencil. Make sure that you don't press hard on the paper. So let's start with a kind of a big drip, like, upside down. So we're gonna do very nice smooth line curved on the top, going slowly down and close it. And here we have our beautiful big upside down drop. Okay, now we're going to go over this line with a zigzag line because moths have a lot of hair, very fluffy and nice body, and we don't want our lines to be too rigid, right? And unnatural. Nice zigzag, 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 zigzag. Now we are going to set the antennas. We're going to go up and down one side, up and down the other side. Now pretend that you want to do a leaf, a very segmented and textured leaf. So you're going to go with the same type of zigzag line all the way around the first antenna, and then we're going to do the same on the second antenna. Nice. Now we're going to kind of create a little division in the body. So not on the middle, but a little higher. You will go very light curved line, and then we're going to do this beautiful zigzag that we have been doing so far on top of this line. Very nice. Now it's time to set the wings, and we proceed carefully and without pushing hard with the pencil, so you're always able to erase if you need to. We start when the antenna touch the head. We're going to go with the diagonal line one side, and then we try to do something as similar as possible. So you're going to point your pencil on the other antenna, and you will go with the diagonal on the other side. We do our best to make that symmetric. If that doesn't happen, no stress, right? You're going to keep it, don't erase, and keep going. Now we're going to close this wing with a very nice wavy line, one, and we're going to close the other wing with exactly same type of wavy line. Now we're going to do the other two wings, both sides. So instead to start here, we're going to start a little more inside. On the inside, we're going to come down in a little diagonal line, and we're going to do the same on the other side. So we proceed, by steps. Then we're going to close it with the same type of line. This time we're going to close it exactly at the end of the body. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Nice and wavy line. Now we are going to add our pattern. We're going to first double the line on both wings. One, and 2, and we're going to do the same on the bottom. 1 and 2. Now we are going to do the very, like, kind of a, we are pretending that we are doing fake eyes, because in fact the moth, to protect themselves from predator, they want to show themselves way bigger and more intimidating. So by faking basically shape of eyes, they trick other animals in thinking that they are really bigger than they are, and then they, they're multiple, maybe insect, right? So you see these beautiful multiple eyes. Now we're going to do another wavy line, more or less at the same level of the line of the division between the head and the abdomen, the rest of the body. 1 and 2. We're going to do the same over here. 1 and 2 to create our pattern. And we're going to create a beautiful pattern over here. So we're going to keep this shape as a reference. We're going to just do it smaller. So we're going to do one smaller upside down drop, one regular shape drop, one upside down drop. This is a generic moth, right? That is a simple, not hyper realistic, but yet pretty reliable. And if you want to add the more patterns on your wing, feel free to do so. For example, here maybe I'm gonna have the pattern that goes all the way down with a nice wavy line, so will allow me to use in different colors. Now we can start to color. You can use coloring pencil or markers. I'm gonna use markers so we do a little faster. And for what concern the colors, we are not going to choose very bright color, but we're gonna stay more on the dark and dull side of the color wheel, which means that instead to use the bright and pure colors, you're going to select the tint of these colors or the shade or the tones, which are the same color, just like, for example, red. Instead to choose a bright cherry or fire red, you can choose a very dark burgundy red or red rose or red wine or old red, so it doesn't look very bright. The same for the blue. Instead to use a bold ultramarine or sky blue, you can choose something that is more like a very pale and light, very delicate and gentle, or you can opt for a gray blue like this one, which is it's a medium gray with some hint of blue. Remember, friends, that you can also overlap the colors. So you can have a light blue, and then with the light blue, you can go over with some gray, and you will have exactly the color that you want. And I will play with different type of brown, different type of, grayish, and see what happens. I'm proceeding like in a symmetric way, which means that, for example, this one was supposed to be brown. It's a little too bright, but it's okay. But I might go on top with a light gray. I'm gonna decide at the end. Remember that when we color, it's still an experiment, right? The only thing that I recommend you, regardless of what you're using, pencil or markers, is that proceed with care. There is no need to rush. If you're using markers, if you use them slow, like I'm doing, you will have better coloring, no gaps, and more intensity of the color, because you let the ink the time to, be released and absorbed by the paper. Instead, if we scribble and we do super fast, we're gonna get tired way sooner and our marker look dry. Can proceed in the same direction. Also important is to choose the direction of a new color so you don't have all the strokes everywhere, right? Because then it's gonna make your piece look a little, rushed, not very neat. I might use the same color for both wings, the border. And as I say, feel free to experiment and change the color palette. You don't have to copy mine. You can use any type of markers because we're working on paper, so even Crayola and washable markers work perfectly. You don't have to have alcohol markers. If you have them available, they're fancy, they're nice because they offer also multiple choices in color. But remember what I say, that we can always overlap with care, because if you push too much, you know, the markers, the ink can actually ruin or rip the paper. So just gently, without pressing too much, you can overlap the different colors to obtain more tones, more shade of the color if you're not satisfied, and if you think that is too bright or too light, you can definitely fix that. And the last part that I will do with this brown is this pattern inside the wing, both sides, of course. Now let me see if we have a nice gray, and let's see how this gray looks. I'm gonna use it for the pattern on the head that contribute to this as the aspect, right, the general aesthetic of the moth, because as we say, moths usually hide themselves in nature on trees. So this is why they really don't want to feature beautiful bright colors, because they would attract predators, right? So they want to really stay as hidden as possible. And they are kind of faking the fact that they have multiple eyes, because they want to suggest to the predator that they are bigger than they really are. They are multiple animals together, so the predator will not be attracted and will not take the risk. I really like this nice, very light brown, warm gray. Maybe I'm gonna use it for my antenna as well. When you color, you can select, as I said, any color, right? And any color combination. My advice to you is to reuse the color, one color more than once, just not in the area they are close to each other, right? So you create variety, but also you create reference and connection between the color palette, which gives your piece harmony. This is one of the principles of art that we learn, where everything looks very well balanced, right? Harmonious. Now, let's see what do we have here. And let's see, probably I want to add a little bit of red. And I'm using this red that should be kind of pale. Not as pale as I hoped, but definitely is not super bright. Maybe you will see from the camera a little brighter than it is, but overall it's not an intense type of red. And I feel that that is going to be good for both of my wings, the bottom. Remember, keep the same direction. If the wings go in this direction, in a sort of a diagonal, you will use the same direction. So you will support basically the shapes that you and the pattern that you create, and you're not gonna flat them down and contrast. Instead, if you color the other side, you're gonna contrast that, and you're gonna make your work look like flat because you're not supporting the direction. The weather is awful today. We are back in the winter. Well, we're technically still in the winter until March 21st. However, this looks like really the beginning of January. It is snowing and then raining here in Utah. So it's the perfect day to stay inside and practice some art so we can get better and better in what we do. For example, probably I can use this color as a reference, like to create a connection between the top part of my design and the bottom. So I carefully outline first, so I'm sure that I'm not going to go inside. I go back on this beautiful zigzag line that we created at the very beginning, and I love to do tiny little zigzag. It's funny. And then very carefully, I'm gonna fill the space that I want with this red. Doing it. Moths are really beautiful creature and fascinating creature. There are so many, right? When we say moth, that is like under the same family and the same umbrella, we have so many different shapes and sizes and patterns, right? It's fantastic. Now, I'm gonna try to use this very light blue for the moth eyes. Once again, it's a little brighter that I wanted, but what I will do, I will go over maybe with a very light gray to tone it down. Very carefully, small movement with your hands and your wrist so you can control the markers. We're gonna do the same over here. And the same over here. Now I will get the black to do the inside of my eyes. One, well, the moth eyes, not my eyes. And then we need to make a decision about what color to use for the wings. So I'm gonna try, see this green gray. This is what it says, a greenish gray. I like it very much. I'm gonna do first the top because I don't know if I wanna use it for the whole wing. And then the top on the other side. It's beautiful when we pay attention to the patterns that we create, and instead to rush and color only with one color, we take a little extra care and we use the different sections that we created to use different colors, and will make our drawing look way more professional and more interesting. And now this is a burnt sienna. Let's see if I have, if this one is the same type of red. I think that this one could be good. It is a red. It is called rose red. So it's similar to this one, but slightly different, which I'm fine with it because it creates cohesiveness, which is like a consistency throughout my wings and my design. So it doesn't alter the color palette that much, but at the same time, it's slightly different and it creates a visual interest. Also, I feel that these two colors, because they are almost complementary on the color wheel, which means that they sit almost on the opposite side, because this is not a pure red, and this is a very, very, very light blue. I feel that they contrast each other very well. Remember, go slow, up and down, because although some of you won't believe it, but sometimes we do way faster by slowing down our movement, because if you color super quick, your color is not going to be beautiful and you will have to retouch it and go over it. Instead, if you do it nice and slow the very first time, you're going to have the best result. And you will see that you're capable of creating amazing things. You're capable of learning a correct and proper technique, and you're able to use simple lines and geometrical shapes to draw beautiful, not hyper realistic, and also it's not an advanced level, but I would say like an intermediate, right? So it's still very well done. You have details. It's really inspired by the real insect that we are representing, and is not rushed. Like, how pretty is that? And then if you want, you can leave it like that, or with a black Sharpie, you can go carefully, very carefully on some of the details, and you will do the outlines. I'm gonna do the outlines, so if you want, before you do yours, so you can watch, and if you like them, you can do them at your own convenience. But instead, if you like the moth the way it is, leave it. If you have been using coloring pencil, you can do the outlines with a black pencil, or you can leave your moth without outlines. So I'm carefully going on top of all the lines, respecting the shapes. So the outlines, my friend, if you decided to do it, you need to pay attention and you need to be careful, because if you rush them and you trace other lines with black on top of the ones that you have, you're going to actually ruin the piece and you're going to ruin your pattern, because you're altering the pattern that instead that we want to save. If you want, you can even do some texture inside just to reinforce this idea of, hair, something fluffy and furry. And you can do something like that also over here if you want, not too precise because we don't want them to look like leaves. We're gonna go around the pattern, nice and slow. If you have to go slower than I'm going, go slower. Gonna do the same texture over here. Feel that it's very pretty. And now very carefully, we are going to outline patiently the line. The outlining practice is amazing for your fine motor skills, because the more lines you trace, the better and more fluent your skills will be. We can definitely retouch them, increase the thickness if we want, but if you do like that, you're gonna mess it up. So make sure that you take a moment, you're focused, concentrated in what you're doing, and you do not rush these steps that could help your design to get even better or could ruin your design, and then you will have to start over. If you happen to have a line that doesn't get precise as you want, you can go gently and carefully again and fix it by making it look thicker, which I also love because I love the alternation of thick and thin lines. I feel that makes the design even more interesting. For example, the corner can be nice and thick. Now we go for our last wing, super slow. Change the direction of your hands. If you want to change the direction of the paper, you can. I cannot because I want to show you the design, but you can move the paper around if that facilitates your outlines. And one last over here, on this one and this one. A quick check if we did everything, and this is our beautiful moth. I love very much this nice and like a color palette, more like on the darkness side of the color wheel, very dull colors. So we are using mostly shades and tones. And overall, the outline came out pretty. So it's up to you if you want to include them or if you don't want to include them. And now I will let you, and we'll see each other again for another practice.